everyone. For those who were not on earlier, my name is Abja Midha. I'm a co-chair of the New York State Bar Association Committee on Legal Aid. I'm the executive director of Volunteers of Legal Service. I'm really excited for this panel discussion that we will have over the next 45 minutes, where we'll have an opportunity to hear from 4 really accomplished civil legal services attorneys from across New York State. We are just going to take a second for everyone to transfer over from the other room to this virtual presentation room, and then we will go ahead and get started. And so for our panelists, if you can turn your mics and cameras on, you should be able to hop on screen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Great. All right. Excellent. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Johanna. Hi, Amrita. We are one more speaker who's joining us, PJ. And excellent. So we're all here. So really excited to welcome this group of attorneys from across New York State, all of who are doing amazing civil legal services work, helping low-income New Yorkers access justice. And, our goal for this panel today is to really give all of the participants in today's virtual career fair an opportunity to learn, to hear and learn from civil legal services attorneys directly about what it's like to be an attorney in this space, and what are some of the benefits, the challenges, and why we all do this work and how important it is. So we're going to kick things off. I'm going to briefly introduce each panelist, then they will each in turn very briefly describe their practice areas, and then we have a set of questions that I'll be asking each of the panelists. If anyone in the audience has questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. There's a general chat, public chat function, and time permitting, we'll try to field your questions as well, since we don't have a ton of time today. So I'm just looking at my screen, and we'll go in order of how I see folks on my screen. Really pleased to welcome Johanna Bortnick from the Legal Aid Society of Mid-New York, PJ Herne from the Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York, Kevin Perry from Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A, and Amrita Khan from the Empire Justice Center. So I think just maybe quickly starting off with Johanna, if you could just share briefly your title, where you're located, and just give us a brief overview of your practice. And then once you're done, we'll pass it on to PJ.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Johanna Bortnick. I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society of Mid-New York. I work out of our Utica office. I practice family and matrimonial law and work mainly with survivors of domestic violence.
Thank you, Johanna. PJ, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm a senior attorney, PJ Herne. Now I work with the Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York. I'm actually located out of our Canton, New York office. One of the pluses with our organization is we get to do remote work. So I'm actually at my private office. I do primarily foreclosure work, eviction work, and unique to my spot, I'm from the St. Regis Mogg Indian Reserve. And so working with Lastney, we have a project where I get to work on my home community at least 2.5 days a week.
Awesome. That sounds like amazing work. Why don't we turn it over to Kevin and then Amrita?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Perry. I work with Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A in Brooklyn, and I work a part of the housing unit. We essentially work with the tenants facing eviction and help keep tenants in their home in Brooklyn. And I'll pass it off.
Amrita, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Amrita Khan. I'm a senior attorney at Empire Justice Center. I work out of our Long Island office. I work in the immigration unit with crime victims And the crimes run from asylum to domestic violence to crimes that occurred in the United States. Most of my clients are from Central America, but I have clients from all over. And everybody is in search of the American dream, and I help them find that dream.
Awesome. Thank you, Amrita. So we're going to go ahead and jump in with the questions. And I think to start things off, Kevin, could you share a little bit about why you chose to work in civil legal services?
Thank you, Abja. That's a great question. I I have a short answer. The short answer is this: autonomy over my career. I'm gonna dive into the long answer is civil legal services offer you a plethora of different practice areas, whether you're passionate about a particular demographic or a community, or if you have a mission you would like to stand behind. Civil legal services just give all of the opportunities where you can choose a particular practice area. And I, for one, was blessed with the opportunity of designing my own fellowship right out of law school. So I was able to curate the work that I did to align directly with what I was most passionate about, and had the opportunity to not only meet great attorneys and network along the way, but put my legal career on a trajectory that I felt comfortable with. And that is just a feature that is not offered in other careers.
Thanks, Kevin. Johanna, would you also like to share why you chose to work in the civil legal services space?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually a second generation legal services attorney, so I've been surrounded my entire life by these really inspiring, competent attorneys who also happen to be civil legal services attorneys. So once I figured out that I wanted to be an attorney, seeing these attorneys that I really admired, that I really respected, and who also were doing, really incredible things with their career, it was really a no-brainer for me to do the same thing.
Amazing. And Amrita, can you share a little bit about your journey to becoming a civil legal services attorney?
I'm sorry, I'm having some technical issues. Yes, I was going to say that exactly like Kevin and Johanna, I enjoy the autonomy with regard to case selection and direction. Um, my getting involved with civil legal services is kind of a long path. I started working as a social worker in the New York City foster care system in the 1990s. And I returned to law school because I wanted to have more skills as an advocate. I thought a law degree would better equip me to advocate for my clients. And it has. I started out in matrimonial law and I stumbled upon immigration about 6 years ago. I love being able to screen my clients for eligibility to determine whether their case will be successful and to continue on my education with further research without having to worry about billing time. I think that learning is continuous, and I think that we do a disservice to our clients if we fail to research and read about new developments in the law. And I know about immigration is that it's ever changing. And I value being in an environment that recognizes and praises that ability to learn and research and develop cases rather than trying to bill clients for profit.
Thank you, Amrita, for sharing. We just heard from some of our panelists about why they chose to work in civil legal services. PJ, can you share a little bit with us about why you have chosen to stay in the civil legal services space over the course of your legal career? And what do you think, civil legal services offers to you that other settings might not?
Yeah, I mean, I've been staying here because when I initially got hired, one of the things I proposed to lastly was to actually bring services to here where my community, the San Francisco Indian Reserve, and they were very agreeable with that and worked with me to make that happen. So that was a big plus. That's what really keeps me involved. Um, Definitely enjoy my other work I've done in Canton on the other side with the foreclosure work and the eviction work. So that's been, two real positives. And I've been practicing law for a while. So I think on the more practical side, I think somebody had mentioned not chasing billable hours is one thing. I think when you have your own legal office too, there's many things you have to worry about. Everything from CLEs to insurance to who's going to answer the phone. And I think with civil legal services, we kind of band together and we have people that serve those functions. Everything from case intake to by the time you get the case, you don't have to worry about those other things and be able to concentrate and focus on the client. And for me to be able to have clients both on and off the reserve now has been a big plus, and it's definitely keeping me, involved in civil legal services for, what I'm doing up here in the North Country.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're getting to do incredible work, PJ. Kevin, you noted that you started off as a fellow, and then you chose to stay on in civil legal services once your fellowship ended. Talk to us a little bit about why you decided to stay in the civil legal services space, and what you think civil legal services offers that other settings might not, for someone at your stage at your stage in your legal career.
Yes. So that opportunity to work in a specific practice area, working with a specific demographic, that opportunity came out of being able to design my own fellowship. And I was introduced to the fellowship opportunity from my clinic involvement at law school. So it was a natural transition where it seemed like the next step of my career. And I knew that I wanted to be in my home community in Brooklyn. I knew I wanted to work with a particular demographics, people that had to navigate the challenges of poverty. And it was a niche area that the other resources outside of civil legal services really wasn't able to have that grassroots interaction with the community, and that opportunity just wasn't there. But when I came to the civil legal service field, it was almost like a dream come true. It's almost as if they asked, what would you like to do? Well, yes, literally, I designed a fellowship that asks, what would you like to do? What are you passionate about? And it literally was an opportunity there for me. And I just felt like it. And at the conclusion of the fellowship, I was very passionate about housing law, and our opportunity was right there. Just they welcomed me every step of the way. At no point I had to overcome hurdles and the crazy work stories that a lot of other people experience. I just felt like I've been extremely blessed with the opportunity to work in the exact demographic, the exact communities that I'm most passionate about. And when you are progressing through your career without those barriers, it feels natural, it feels welcoming, and it feels like you're doing the right thing, on top of the fact that the work is very rewarding.
Amazing. Amrita, similar question for you, and just particularly in light of the fact that you had a career before going to law school, and then you went to law school, and you have practiced in a number of different areas. Would love to just hear from you about your motivation for staying in the civil legal services space, and what you think civil legal services offers that other settings may not.
Well, I always liked working with people. And when I was in college, I knew that I enjoyed working with people and helping them. It was cathartic to me. I felt it made me feel good. And when I started working as a social worker, I felt very limited because I felt like a law degree would equip me with more like being somebody who changed things rather than observe things. And so I went to law school, and I've seen that it's given me a great deal of autonomy, and the ability to work with clients. I have flexibility with regard to my time and schedule, and everything is done to serve the best interests of my clients. I know I'll never be rich, but I'm also not poor. And there's a great deal of benefits that are involved in working in public interest law. You're not stuck in an office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. trying to maximize your profit. It's more about, giving you the work-life balance that you need in order to be mentally and physically healthy so you can better serve your clients.
So well said. Thank you for sharing, Amrita. And Johanna, would love to hear from you about your staying in the civil legal services space, right? Upon making that decision to first enter it, and then also, what do you think civil legal services offers that you might not be able to access in other settings?
Oh my goodness, it offers so much. It's hard to distill it down to just a little bit, but one thing I think I would raise is just how much support there is for different ideas you might have. I mean, I started a name change clinic here last year, and I had this idea. I went to my managing attorney and she said, go for it. I mean, that's not something that you necessarily find at any old law firm. So there's kind of that aspect of things. And the other thing I will say more practically is there is loan forgiveness. And I know, I think we all really believe in the work we do, but the reality of the fact is that law students have a lot of debt. And this is a really good way to do something really good with your life and also get a really great benefit out of it.
Johanna, thanks so much for mentioning loan forgiveness, because I definitely, that is always something, I think, right, on anyone's mind as they are graduating from law school and looking at those loan bills. And I saw Kevin nodding along, so I'm gonna get my sense is that you also probably can appreciate the benefits of loan forgiveness as well. We've heard a little bit about why you all decided to work in civil legal services and what keeps you motivated to stay in this space. So why don't we turn to hear a little bit more about what it's like for all of you on a day-to-day basis. And so, PJ, if you can just kick us off by sharing a little bit about what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little unique. It's probably a little bit of a different setting, but I think sometimes that goes with legal aid work. Our organization's a little unique. We are unionized, hard to believe, lawyers being members of a union, but we do have a CBA, and actually we work with management quite well. And so we actually have a remote work schedule. And so my week will actually start in Canton on Mondays. Right in the very first part of the day, just out of habit for me, is to definitely catch up on emails, especially on a Monday. Always seems to be hectic. Start keeping track of my timekeeping, which we do have to do in our organization. And then we can start doing case intakes and then start working the phones, really. For us in the North Country, we are a rural area, so if there's going to be court, a lot of it's night court and justice court. And so we will make those appointments, but we do have flex scheduling to work around those in our organization. And so on Tuesday, Wednesday, I actually work here out of my private office, depending on the work schedule here. But on Thursday and Friday, I'm at the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Government Building doing actual appointments there, which I'll be setting up on like Tuesday, Wednesday. And for me, unique on the reserve is I'll actually do some home visits, which is always breaks the mold. We've done everything from Social Security case for an elder to write some wills for somebody that are in hospice care. So you kind of run the bases pretty well, and so it's not a boring week. It's not being confined to an office chasing a billable hour. So I think that's the part I like quite a bit.
Yeah, PJ, thanks for sharing. It sounds like every day is quite unique, and definitely sounds like probably keeps you on your toes. Same question for Amrita. If you could just share a little bit about what your typical day looks like.
Well, like PJ, there's no typical day for me. Every day is different depending upon the needs of my clients. I'm a storyteller. My job is to tell my clients stories, USCIS, to immigration, to family courts. There's a lot of form filling, but my social work background comes in to help me, because my job also requires me to be a counselor, a teacher, a mediator. Skills as a social worker and as an attorney when advocating for my clients, because they're new to this country. They have to navigate through systems that they may not be familiar. And one of the nice things that I do is that I help them navigate through those systems. And I come from a family of immigrants, so that is an additional help to me. one of the nice things about the organization where I work, Empire Justice Center, is that we're multidisciplinary. And there are housing attorneys, there are matrimonial attorneys. So if my client comes to me as a crime victim or a victim of domestic violence and say needs assistance with child support, I can refer her in-house to one of the attorneys that I work with, or needs assistance with, landlord-tenant issues and is being, taken advantage of by an unscrupulous landlord. I have somebody like Kevin, who I can refer to. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that ability to really help my clients holistically.
It's amazing. Such an incredible service you're providing to your clients, and love how you're able to draw upon both your social work background as well as your colleagues to collaborate and provide holistic support. Such a huge benefit for clients. Johanna, do you want to tackle the same question about what a typical day or typical week looks like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a morning person, so I'm usually to the office pretty early. The first thing I do every day is my to-do list. It keeps me on track, make sure I'm not missing any of the deadlines that are so important to all of us. We're very collaborative at my organization, so we have weekly subject matter meetings. There's a matrimonial meeting on Monday and a domestic violence meeting on Tuesday that I always try my best to attend because your colleagues' experiences and opinions are such a very valuable tool. The rest of my day is taken up with client meetings, writing, court appointments, anything like that. And like PJ, I do also do home visits because I have a lot of clients for whom traveling to the office is just not an option.
It's great. And it's great to hear they're able to meet your clients where they're at. So I'm sure they very much appreciate that. So we heard a little bit about a typical day. Would also love to hear from each of you about one of your successes or most rewarding experiences. And why don't we kick things off with Kevin answering that question?
I would say it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint a particular success or a particular rewarding experience. So I'm going to just answer it with a very broad stroke and says that my fellowship, I had the privilege of designing my own fellowship, and it was designed to target micro entrepreneurs in my hometown. Well, essentially Brooklyn, but I had the privilege of working with micro entrepreneurs throughout the city. And while at my fellowship through Volunteers of Legal Service, I worked on a micro enterprise project. And one particular thing I was able to do was we hosted a clinic. But we hosted a clinic in my childhood NYCHA development, working with micro entrepreneurs from my community that I identify with. And these people were just like the people who inspired me to become an attorney, like my mom, people who are my mom's a merchant, my aunts who are hair braiders, my grandmother who did childcare. So I'm working with micro entrepreneurs doing the exact thing that inspired me to be an attorney. And I was able to be the change I've always wanted to be. And that opportunity was just so rewarding. I was so passionate. It didn't feel like work, but it definitely would be like a dream come true. And it's just so rewarding.
That's incredible, Kevin, and I'm so glad you had that opportunity to be able to work directly with your community. Amrita, do you want to share one of your most rewarding experiences or successes?
I think I've seen so many successes, and what is a general trend is that when people come to me or the clients come to me, they start out being victims, and then when they realize that they do have rights and they do have methods to move forward, they become warriors, and they become people who they're empowered. One client that comes to mind is when I met her, she was a victim of domestic violence who unfortunately had been, she met her husband in Jamaica and where she was originally from. And he was very physically abusive to her, mentally abusive to her. She ended up in the hospital. And a nurse at the hospital told her about that there are methods that she didn't need him to stabilize her status, and she didn't need him, that she could do it on her own. So she came to me, and I told her about the Violence Against Women Act and VAWA, and how she could obtain immigration status and work authorization and a green card without her husband. So I filed for VAWA for her, and as soon as she got her work authorization, she started working as a nursing assistant at a local hospital that paid for her to go back to school, and she became a registered nurse. So she was an RN, and I handed her her green card, and she wanted to contribute. So she started volunteering at a local hospital, and providing not only medical services, but being that nurse in the hospital that says, look, you can do this. You can be that warrior. You can be that survivor. You don't need to be a victim anymore. And I love being a part of that process of, changing people's lives so they stop being victims and they start being warriors.
That's incredible. And I just love the example you shared, Amrita, of, right, where it's a great example of how, as a civil legal services attorney, a client comes to you with one particular legal issue that they're seeking assistance with, right? And by helping them with that, it has the impact it has on them long term, right? It opens up doors, it opens up opportunities for economic security, to be, as you said, right, contributing to her community. It's such a great example, right, of how, as a civil legal services attorney, one matter you might work on, the ripple effects, the positive ripple effects that has on a person's life. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing. PJ, do you have an example you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's probably two things that pop into my mind. One of the things that we've been working on, the project here, is the extreme difficulty and almost non-existent opportunity we have to get home mortgages here in the reserve. And so that's been kind of an ongoing project that we've been working on, with legal aid and working with our own tribal nation government. And so that's kind of an ongoing thing. I think when I first started with legal aid, interestingly, I had come with some experience. And so one of my very first clients was actually living in a public housing, and he had mental health issues. And so he had to go and receive medical treatment, which took him out of the housing. And the housing authority had actually evicted him and took his stuff to the garbage. And so when he come out of the hospital, he had no place to stay. So he was probably like my third client. And so we actually assisted him by getting an Article 78 proceeding together and actually suing the housing authority. And so we were able to actually get him some money. He didn't want to go back to that housing authority, no big surprise. But we were actually able to assist him and get housing, sue the housing authority, and actually got a little bit of money through the settlement. So I mean, it's kind of those things that you can do an individual client, and also try to work on systemic things. If I was in private practice, I don't think those things would ever happen.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing, PJ. Johanna, do you have an example you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that I recently started a name change clinic, and it was really aimed at people in the LGBTQ plus community who were looking to change their name and their sex designations to get that in line with who they really were. And I think I will never forget my first client when I handed her the order that meant that, she could have the name she wanted and use the sex designation that she really was. And I will never forget the look on her face. But I will also say that I remember every survivor that I've ever worked with. And when you're able to leave the courtroom and tell them that they have that order of protection and they have that level of security, those are moments that you never, ever forget.
So well said, Johanna. It's really, really wonderful to hear each of these examples you've all shared. I think, all of them very much show the diversity of legal matters that civil legal services attorneys are able to assist clients with, right? Family law, immigration, small business, home mortgages. There's just so many areas of legal need, and that is something that we as civil legal services attorneys, right, are really able to fulfill and provide that service. And so thank you everyone for sharing that example. Want to just, my next question is directed to the folks who are outside of New York City, and would love to just hear from you. What do you love about where you live and work? And so maybe PJ, you can start us off with your time up in the North Country.
Yeah, I think it's just the old expression, home is where the heart is, right? And so my wife is also from here, from the reserve. And so when we had our family, we always wanted to stay here. And then it just became an issue of, well, how do you, not just become a lawyer, but how do you actually support yourself and your family being a lawyer here in the North Country? And so when those two things come together, life has been pretty good. I like the rural nature. I also like the ability to travel, to see open spaces. I've been to the city many times on business, both in Albany, New York City, Washington, D.C., and my prior work experiences. But, you always come home. I think what's the other expression? A house is where you hang your hat, but a home is where your heart is. So I think that's, kind of the classic expression for here in the North Country for a lot of people. And so, yeah, I mean, really interesting up here. We have some pretty harsh winters, but the summers can be beautiful. We have the Adirondack Park, where our community is right along the St. Lawrence River. So it can be a very beautiful area. It can be a little harsh sometimes, but other than that, it's kept me interested, especially if you can do legal work and needed legal work in this area. There is a shortage in the North Country for attorneys. So if you're in the job market, it's definitely something to consider and look at. That'll be my kind of sales pitch for the entire region.
That's a great plug for North Country, PJ. Thank you. Johanna, do you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. And PJ, I will say it's a very small world because I grew up in St. Lawrence County, so right near you. I live in Utica, and I think something I love about Utica is how vibrant of a community it is. I would say Utica is well known for being so welcoming to people of, all nationalities from all different places, which means that we have this really incredible community with lots of festivals. I table at the Latina Festival every year, which is such a good time. There's lots of great restaurants. And on a more practical note, I will say it's very affordable. I've been able to buy a home. I have, a friend here who's been able to buy a home. And if you live, not to knock New York City, but if you live in New York City, it can be, if buying a home is something you're interested in, that can be very tough. So I will say communities that are outside of the city, things like that are way more possible.
That's great. And congrats on becoming a homeowner, Johanna. That's exciting. Amrita, do you want to share about living and working on Long Island?
Sure. Honestly, I feel like living and working on Long Island, you have the best of both in that you're less than 1 hour away from New York City, but you return home to a much calmer environment where you have parking that's huge. I have a driveway, I have a house with a washing machine that I don't have to. I lived in New York City for several years. I lived in Queens and Brooklyn. And just the ease of not having to use public transportation, having your own car. I have a yard. I have 2 teenage daughters, so I have great schools. And Long Island used to be like a weekend retreat for people from New York, but now it has a life of its own. And there are many different kinds of restaurants, movie theaters, beaches, national parks. I think I read somewhere that it was one of the best places to live in America because of the mix that you have. So it's not all just malls and, girls with high hair.
Thanks for sharing, Amrita. And I think Johanna, PJ, and Amrita, all of you, right? Great plug for considering, right, living in different parts of the state. And I'd also say for those of us who are New York City based to check out other parts of the state as well. So thank you for that. So just looking at time, and so I'm gonna think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. And so the next question is, what do you like the most about your current legal services position? And maybe Johanna, you can get us started with that.
I think I can sum it in one word. It's the people. Honestly, I love working with the survivors that I work with. I really admire and respect my colleagues here so much. And the fact that I get to use, my litigation skills, my writing skills, all of those skills, and I get to work with the people that I work with and have the colleagues that I have. It's really special to me.
Amazing. PJ?
I would definitely echo that. And I think one of the unique things I've noticed with our organization, and I'm sure it's pretty common among other legal aid society offices, is we actually have conferences that, teleconference, Zoom meetings where just our offices to get together in various areas of the law. So we have a foreclosure group that meets every Tuesday. Very smart people involved, very experienced people that have been with legal aid a lot longer than I. And we also have a housing group that meets on Fridays. And so if you run into a question that you don't know, it's not going to be overwhelming to you, because I can almost guarantee somebody on that call has seen it before, has had to address it before. And that's a kind of a support system that can be really helpful. I know it's been helpful for myself starting in legal aid. And I also try to help all the new attorneys that join us and then join us on those calls. So I think it's one of the positive aspects that, to have that support network behind you, even in my stage of my career, that, you never stop learning.
So well said. Yeah. And I think, PJ, you just mentioned this, but we've heard this from other colleagues, right? And legal services organizations, right? The sense of community and the opportunities for collaboration, for thought partnership, and to really work closely with and learn from your peers is really special. And I think really wonderful for your own development as an attorney, but also means you can bring your best self forward, right, for providing high quality legal services to our clients. And Amrita, why don't you jump in too if you have anything to share about what you like most about your legal services position, and then we'll shift gears to the last question.
I mean, I think the question should be, what don't I like? Because there are so many things to like. You're helping people. You have a very healthy, mind and, emotional life. You have a work-life balance. You have, environment which encourage and fosters collaboration and, continued learning and education. I'm very satisfied and happy with my legal services career. And I definitely, if somebody wants to go into legal services, I would say do it, because, you have to, the money is, you're going to be fine. And it's about having a happy life and having a fulfilled life. And for me, legal services has provided me with that.
Thank you, Amrita. So last question for each of our panelists, and I'll ask Kevin to start with a response. What would you say to someone who is considering working in civil legal services? What advice would you have for someone who's looking to enter the civil legal services space? And Kevin, why don't you start?
Well, I do want to just start off in saying, if you have an interest in working in civil legal services, chances are this is the place for you. I don't want to put us in a box, because it's so many opportunities and we come in so many different backgrounds and different interests. But generally speaking, if you have an interest in working with communities at a grassroots level, being involved at different levels of projects and developments, and you like and thrive in diverse workspace, or like diverse work opportunities, or if you enjoy being a good person and doing fulfilling work, essentially, there is no limit to the opportunities that civil legal services present. And because there is no limit, because there's so many supportive attorneys, so many supportive staff members, so many supportive organizations, so it's the ocean, to say the least, and I only mention a drop. If you're interested, and this is who you are, and this is something that you find passionate, I would just say simply come. There is room for you at the table, and we are ready when you are, and we'll welcome you in with open arms. Oh, I think you're muted, Abja.
Thank you for pointing that out, Kevin. Johanna, do you want to jump in with advice you'd have for someone who's considering a civil legal services career?
I'd say just get involved. If there's a legal services in your area, where you grew up, where you are at school, just reach out, find, any attorney that you can find at that legal services near you. I'm sure will be willing to speak with you. I've never met a legal services attorney who wasn't so excited to speak to people who were interested in this career path. And most civil legal services have clerkship positions. We have internships, and we, like Kevin's experience, we will really work with you to help you get the experience that you want. So if you want to see the inside of a courtroom, we have litigators. If you are interested in, more of the non-litigation side, like immigration, we have immigration attorneys. You can see what that's like. So I would say just do it. Just get involved.
Great. PJ.
I would for sure echo those things. I think one of the big things would be definitely get to know the organization you're looking at. There's a lot of great public information out there. I know with our organization, we're probably one of the larger ones because we're spread out among 5 offices covering 16 counties, all the way from way up here where I'm located down to Albany. And so we could offer you a choice of office space if you're interested in different areas from Albany to up here in the rural North Country. So, I mean, definitely, look at the organization, ask questions, and don't be scared to ask people within the organization.
Great. Thank you for that, PJ. And Amrita, any advice that you would share?
Like my, fellow co-panelists said, just get involved, start interning, start volunteering. There's so many opportunities that are available. And, if you have a desire to help people and to, make a difference in people's lives, then this is the place for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to each of our panelists, Kevin, Johanna, PJ, and Amrita, for sharing more of your experiences, your perspectives, your advice. I would say, listening to each of you, I've been in the civil legal services space for many years. This conversation has been so energizing and inspirational to hear about the impact that you have all been able to make with the clients and the populations that you serve. For those who are watching, our participants, we hope that this will get you excited about civil legal services. Again, right, as you've heard from all of our panelists, there are so many different types of practice areas. There's so many different types of opportunities. It is a really welcoming community. You get to have a major impact and really help to change people's lives. And there's an opportunity for collaboration and growth and learning. And so and those opportunities exist all over the state, right? There is a need for civil legal services attorneys everywhere in New York State, and communities across the state could really benefit from having more attorneys enter the space. So thank you again to our panelists. I hope for everyone watching, this has been informative and inspirational and helpful. And I think on that note, we will open up the tables again so that folks can continue to meet with representatives from different organizations. We'll have those tables open for about an hour, and then we'll have we'll be closing around 4:45. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.